Where I do think that the root cause, and I really mean this in sort of a root cause sense, not that it's another thing on the list of priorities, but it's pretty darn close to the existence of the root cause of so many of our perils right now, and even the immigration crisis, which I think is going to be a centerpiece in our discussion, is the existence of the nanny state in the United States. I mean, I think if you dismantled the nanny state, you effectively have solved 70+% of the immigration problem in the United States, because that's the magnet that draws people over. Yet what I've seen in our own conservative movement over the last 10, 20 years is that we've become reluctant to take aim at the entitlement state, but have become more vehement in our responses to the symptoms of the entitlement state, including the immigration crisis, but with a greater unwillingness to go to the root cause. So that's my own diagnosis, and if I may even say self-critique of the conservative movement. But I'll use that to maybe open up and give you a chance to not only talk about your book, but to be able to get into some of the topics we had teed up for today.
Well, that's very interesting. I think there's some corroboration for that viewpoint in the way American immigration differs from European. We have our problems with immigration, but there are certain problems that Europe has that we don't have. Europeans tend to tell pollsters that they consider migrants lazy or antisocial, and I think that even in the United States, when we have a very difficult situation with migrants in certain places like Springfield, Ohio, that is not the critique. And part of the reason is that, just as you say, we have a nanny state that is less well developed than Europe does, or to the extent that it is well developed, foreigners, including newly arrived immigrants, have less access to it than they do in Europe. So in Europe, every newcomer has a kind of a cushion that allows him, or has traditionally had a cushion, that allows him to just sort of follow his instinct where he wants it to go. And one of the reasons, for instance, that so many immigrants get into radical Islam is that they're sort of subsidized to do it. I remember seeing a statistic a few years ago that 2/3 of the imams in France are on welfare. In the United States, there's nothing wrong with being an imam, but in the United States, you are sort of forced into the workplace, which is where a lot of assimilation happens.